If you are hearing these words, it means that the deepest part of you has begun to awaken. Not the part of reason, but the part you've always felt yet could never describe. It doesn't speak in words, it calls through sensations, a subtle vibration, as if something invisible is moving within you. That is the first signal of a quantum shift, the moment when your soul begins to move away from the old frequency to return to its true timeline. In the universe, there are no coincidences. You did not stumble upon these messages by accident. You were guided here. An ancient and unseen intelligence has arranged for you to be here at this exact moment, in this exact version of yourself, because the time has come for a part of you to die so that your true self can be born. This death is not to be feared. It takes nothing from you. It only removes what was never truly yours, the roles, the identities, the concepts you once believed were yourself, now beginning to crack. You can feel it in the quietest moments when you look into the mirror and see that your eyes are no longer the same, when you hear your own voice and realize it no longer belongs to the person speaking, when you walk into familiar places and the sense of belonging is gone. That is how the soul signals that the old cycle is completed. Everything you once believed to be stable is now vibrating, and those vibrations are not collapse, but the reorganization of energy preparing for a higher state of consciousness. In quantum physics, all possibilities exist simultaneously. Every decision, every emotion, every choice you have ever made has created its own timeline. You are standing among infinite versions of yourself. Infinite realities of you are living side by side in different probabilities, and it is your awareness, your active observation, your choice of belief that determines which version becomes real. But there is something most people never realize. If you keep seeing the world through your old eyes, if you carry the frequency of your old self, you can only observe the same reality repeating endlessly. Not because the universe is stubborn, but because you are maintaining the same frequency of observation. The harder you try to change, the more you reinforce the very reality you're trying to escape. Because resistance itself is the energy of the old. True transformation doesn't happen when you add something new. It happens when you stop and release. When you no longer cling to the idea of who you are, when you allow the energy to reorganize itself, you enter a point of no time where all possibilities unfold at once. In that moment, the old begins to dissolve, not with an explosion, but with silence. The old doesn't disappear in noise, it disappears in stillness. Just as when ripples fade, only then can the lake reflect its true sky. So too with your mind, when resistance stops, the true reality begins to appear. Perhaps you have already felt the signs, the exhaustion of holding everything together, the sense of being lost even when life seems normal, the strange quiet when things that once excited you now feel empty. Don't fear those voids. Within emptiness, new energy is born. Every rebirth begins with dissolution. Just as a seed must crack in the darkness for a sprout to reach the light, you are not losing yourself. You are shedding the shell that has served its purpose. Your ego will fight this process. It will tell you that you are wrong, that you are losing everything. But in truth, you are only losing the illusion of control. Every fear you feel now is the sign that energy is shifting. Remember, old energy always trembles before it leaves the body. That trembling is not instability, it is liberation. When you stop forcing, when you no longer try to fix or understand, energy begins to arrange itself. Like particles of light in space, they return to their natural positions. The universe doesn't need you to strive for perfection. It only needs your willingness to let go of what no longer aligns. In the moment you allow the entire vibrational structure around you begins to change. Every relationship, job, circumstance, thought, even your body all begin to recalibrate to the new frequency, not through willpower, but through resonance. When your frequency changes, everything out of sync will naturally drift away. People may disappear, old opportunities close, plans that once mattered lose meaning, but understand that is not loss, it is purification. The universe never takes away what your soul still needs. It only removes what you have outgrown. The quantum calling always arrives in silence, through intuition, through dreams, through the feeling that something greater awaits you beyond the edge of surrender. When you sense that signal, don't run. Let yourself be still within the movement. Everything is unfolding exactly as it must. Your mind cannot understand it, but your soul knows. It knows that to step into a higher timeline, you need not add anything new, only release the energies that have completed their purpose. All true evolution begins in emptiness. When you become empty, the universe can finally fill you with the version of yourself it has kept for you all along. Nothing needs to be fixed, only seen. Nothing needs to be created, only remembered. The calling you feel does not come from outside, it comes from within you. It is your highest self sending signals back to your present self, whispering that it's time to return. When you hear that call, everything else in your life begins to shift rhythm. You may lose direction, you may feel as though you're dissolving, but in truth you are being restructured at the deepest level of consciousness. Allow it. Because each time you release an old layer, you do not die, you become more real. This is the first stage of the quantum shift, when the soul realizes there is nothing to seek, for everything has always been here. The universe does not ask you to understand, only to be willing. When you listen, not with your ears, but with your presence, you will feel that it is you calling yourself home. And that is when the real journey begins. There is an invisible force that keeps most people trapped in the same reality. It has no form, no voice, yet it exists within every repetitive thought, every unconscious reaction, every seemingly small decision. It is the energetic wall surrounding you, made up of frequencies from the past, of beliefs, memories, and emotional patterns you have nurtured over the years. This wall is not built by anyone else. It is created by your own consciousness. Every time you think in the same way, feel the same fear, or react to the same thing, you reinforce another layer of that wall. And at some point you begin to believe that it is the real world, that nothing exists beyond it, but the universe never limits you. It is the frequency you maintain that defines the boundaries in which you live. The more you try to change using the same mindset, the deeper you get trapped in the same frequency, because the ego cannot escape the very structure it sustains. You cannot climb over a wall made of your own mind. It dissolves only when you stop reinforcing it. In quantum physics, this is known as the observer collapse principle. When a particle is observed, it loses its infinite potential state and becomes a single outcome. Human beings are the same. When you continue to observe yourself through the old lens, you can only see the old version of yourself. You are choosing the same outcome every day without realizing it. You awaken the same memories, relive the same emotions, and call it your life. But in truth, you are recreating the past in the present. The invisible wall is not outside of you, it lies within your sense of familiarity. Familiarity is the most addictive force in the universe. The mind prefers safety over freedom because safety is something it can control. It convinces you that staying in the old frequency is logical, realistic, necessary, but that is only the echo of fear. Because if you truly look deeper, nothing is truly safe in repetition. There is only stagnation disguised as stability. Every time you feel the urge to change but hesitate, that is the frequency wall activating. It sends signals of resistance into you. It tells you that you're not ready, not good enough, not qualified. It makes you believe that change is dangerous, when in truth, the real danger is staying the same. The invisible wall is sustained by the energy of fear, fear of losing control, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. But if you observe closely, all those fears share the same root, the fear of disappearing. The ego fears its own dissolution because it exists only through the maintenance of memory. When you release the past, the ego loses its foundation. It has nowhere to hold on, and in that moment, it resists the most. You will feel as if everything is turning against you, but in reality, the universe is testing whether you are truly ready to step beyond your own energetic boundary. When you begin to recognize the existence of this wall, that is the first step toward freedom, because you cannot release what you have not yet become conscious of. Observe your thinking habits, your automatic reactions, the stories you keep telling yourself. They are not you, they are echoes of old frequencies. Every time you believe them, you feed energy to strengthen the wall. But every time you pause, simply observe without reacting, you withdraw energy from it. The wall does not need to be broken, it only needs to be starved. No one can break it for you. No teacher, no ritual, no tool can free you if you still identify with the old self. Freedom does not come from effort, it comes from awareness. When you look directly at that wall and recognize that it was created by your own fear, it begins to melt. This energetic wall functions like a field sustained by the frequency of your attention. When you shift your focus from fear to presence, from control to surrender, from the past to this moment, you change your frequency, and the wall loses its nourishment. It collapses, not because you destroyed it, but because you no longer feed it. Like smoke dispersing when the wind changes direction, the old reality fades when you no longer cling to it. Interestingly, when you begin to shift frequencies, the external world reacts strongly. You may face challenges, losses, or situations that make you doubt yourself. That is not a sign of failure. It is how the universe tests the stability of your new frequency. When you can remain calm in the midst of chaos, when you are no longer pulled back into old reactions, you have transcended that layer of vibration. The wall only has power over those who fear it. When you no longer fear, it becomes invisible. The essence of freedom is not in overcoming, but in realizing there was never anything to overcome. All boundaries exist only in perception. When you change your point of view, the borders dissolve. From an energetic perspective, the old frequency wall is like a zone of interference within the quantum field where energy cannot flow freely. When you hold on to unprocessed emotions, they create disturbances in your natural current, blocking the flow. The only way to restore it is to allow emotions to be fully felt without analysis. Each time you dare to feel, energy is released and the wall weakens. Each time you choose silence over reaction, the old waves fade. Each time you return to the present instead of the past, the new frequency strengthens. Gradually, you stop feeling trapped. You begin to sense fluidity in everything. What once hurt you now becomes only a lesson. Those who once angered you now reflect the parts of yourself you have yet to understand. When that happens, you have passed through the wall without breaking it. You simply walk through because your frequencies become transparent. And in that moment, you realize what all masters have ever said, that there is no prison except the mind and no door except awareness. The invisible wall has never truly existed. It exists only as long as you believe it does. And when you stop believing in limitation, the entire reality opens like a boundless space where you are free to become anything your soul desires to be. There is a moment in every person's journey when everything seems to begin collapsing. Not the outer world, but the inner structure where the ego once existed as the center of everything. You may feel it as a strange exhaustion, an indescribable emptiness, or the sense that nothing truly holds meaning anymore. That is the collapse point of the ego, where the false shell you once called yourself begins to dissolve. The ego is not the enemy. It was once a survival mechanism, a protective layer that helped you shape yourself and exist in the material world. But as consciousness begins to expand, the ego becomes constricting. It can no longer contain your soul. Like a snake that must shed its skin, you cannot carry the old layer into a new frequency. This process does not unfold gently. It is not a small change in thinking or a few new habits. It is a true collapse in which everything you once believed, held on to, and identified as yourself is challenged to the very roots. And in that moment, the ego will do anything to survive. It will cling to the familiar, try to fix, control, or deny. But the more it resists, the stronger the collapse becomes, because the nature of awakening is irreversible. When the light of awareness shines into the darkness of ignorance, nothing can remain hidden forever. Quantum physics calls this moment a point of decoherence, where the old state loses its ability to maintain stability in the energy field. All frequency waves that are no longer compatible with the new awareness will naturally disintegrate. Your ego operates by the same principle. It is an energetic structure sustained by beliefs and habits. When awareness changes, the energy no longer nourishes that structure and it begins to collapse. What makes this moment frightening is that the ego makes you believe that you yourself are dying, but in truth, only the false identity is dissolving. Your real part, the one that has always quietly observed from the beginning, cannot be harmed. It was never born, and so it never dies. When you stand at this collapse point, the first feeling is often chaos. All familiar frames of reference vanish. You no longer know who you are, what to believe in, or what purpose remains in what once mattered. The mind calls it a crisis, but the soul calls it liberation, because only when the old falls away can the true appear. The false ego cannot accompany you into the next level of awareness. It must die so that empty space can be created, and in that emptiness, the true self begins to breathe. The ego's collapse does not come from failure. It comes from the energetic contradiction between two frequencies. On one side are old patterns seeking to maintain control. On the other is new awareness seeking expansion and freedom. The tension between these two forces generates vibrations so strong that you feel as if you are shattering. Yet precisely within that shattering, stuck energy begins to be released. Like an old house crumbling so that the foundations can be seen, the ego collapses so the soul can reveal itself. You may feel lost, but do not try to go back. Every path leading to the old version will close. No one can truly return after awareness has touched the light. The ego will try to fool you with the illusion that you are losing everything, that you are falling into nothingness. But that nothingness is not empty. It is the space where true life is germinating. When you dare to remain in the unknown, the undefined, the uncontrolled, you allow the universe itself to restructure you at the deepest level. Energy currents that were once blocked begin to flow. The mind gradually grows quiet, and in that stillness, a strange feeling arises. Not joy, not happiness, but causeless peace. Peace does not come from gaining something, it comes from no longer needing to hold on. When you let go of everything, you realize you never lose. The ego believed it was the one in control, but in truth, it is only the shadow of the true observer. In every religion and ancient wisdom, there is talk of the death and rebirth of the soul, but At the quantum level, this is not a metaphor, it is a real energetic phenomenon. When you stop identifying with the ego, the old energy loses cohesion. Different probability waves begin to collapse and reorganize. You are not merely changing psychologically, you are changing the vibrational structure of your entire being. New neural pathways form, hormones heartbeat, and the electromagnetic field around you shift. The brain moves away from ego, processing regions, and activates areas related to unified awareness. This is real death, but it is the death of illusion, and only when illusion dies can truth live. From a spiritual perspective, this is the moment called the dark night of the soul, the time when darkness covers everything, yet within that darkness the seed of light is being sown. Every pain, fear, and loss you experience is not punishment, but a birthright for the new soul. When you stop resisting and accept that the ego no longer has a role, the dissolution becomes gentle. The ego does not die in noise. It dissolves into silence. And as that silence spreads, you realize something very simple. You are never the roles, the memories, the victories, or the wounds. You are the space in which all of that comes and goes. That space does not change, is not affected, and cannot be lost. That is you. The collapse point of the ego is the only gateway to freedom. There is no other path but to let the false layer die. And in the moment, you no longer fear its death. You see what every sage has seen, that you never needed to become anyone, because you have always been the entire universe experiencing itself through this form. When that awareness occurs, everything changes. No more seeking, no more proving, no more striving for recognition. There remains only still, luminous, overflowing presence. And that is the beginning of quantum rebirth, where the true steps out from the ashes of the old, carrying the light of pure awareness, no longer limited, no longer shaped, only the absolute freedom of the soul returning to its own true nature. Every morning when you open your eyes, you're not just waking up in the same room, you are choosing the same version of yourself again. That choice doesn't come from willpower, but from the level of awareness you maintain. Quantum physics calls this the collapse of the probability wave, where countless possibilities exist simultaneously, yet only one is activated through the act of observation. This means that within the quantum field, infinite versions of you exist, each living in different realities, one complete, enlightened and free, another anxious, limited and fearful. All of them are real at the level of energy, and what determines which timeline you inhabit is the quality of attention you give it. You don't live in reality, you live in the result of what you observe. Every thought, emotion, and belief is a signal sent into the quantum field, requesting that it reflect back to you the same frequency. Therefore, when you see life through the lens of lack, you are choosing the version of reality where lack exists. When you see through gratitude and wholeness, you are choosing the reality where those are true. Nothing in life comes for you to control it, comes for you to observe. The way you look determines what is created. Observation is never passive. It is the deepest form of creation. You cannot look at an electron without altering it, just as you cannot observe your life without transforming it through your awareness. The universe is not separate from you. It responds to every vibration your consciousness emits. When you understand this, you begin to realize that no one is a victim of circumstance. There are only those who haven't yet recognized that they are the creators of their reality. Every reality is a reflection of the frequency you are in. What you call destiny is simply an energy pattern you haven't yet changed. And you can change it any moment by changing how you look. Not by forcing yourself to believe something positive, but by shifting your perspective out of the pattern of fear. Because in the quantum field, nothing is absolute, only what you choose to focus on. When you choose freedom, the old energy of bondage has nowhere to attach. When you choose trust, the probability of doubt begins to collapse. All true transformation begins when you realize you are the observer, not the observed. The ego always tries to convince you that it is the center of everything, that the outer world holds power over who you are. But when you step back and stand in the position of awareness, you see that everything is simply reflecting you. The person who angers you, the situation that exhausts you, the failure that pains you all, are mirrors showing you the inner energy you haven't yet faced. When you stop blaming and start observing, energy shifts instantly. You are no longer trapped in the story. You begin to recalibrate your own frequency. And when frequency changes, reality must change. It has no other choice, because you are the broadcasting center of your own universe. From this perspective, you begin to see the truth. There isn't just one world. There are infinite worlds, infinite versions of you waiting to be activated by awareness. Every time you change a belief, you are not convincing yourself of something new. You are jumping to the timeline where that belief is natural. When you heal a wound, you are not fixing the past. You are shifting into the reality where that wound never existed. Time is not linear as the mind imagines. It is a network of intertwined possibilities, and you move through them via your emotions, thoughts, and focus. Things do not happen sequentially. They happen by frequency. When you recall a memory, you activate an old timeline. When you imagine a new possibility, you open another one. Both exist within the same field, and you have the right to choose which becomes real. The miracle is that you don't need to struggle to change everything. Self-adjusts when you change the observer. So instead of asking, how do I escape this reality? Ask, who is observing this reality? When the observer changes, the entire picture changes. This is the secret shared by both mystics and quantum physicists. Consciousness is not a product of matter. Matter is the manifestation of consciousness. When you observe a particle, it becomes real. When you observe yourself with presence, you become real. But when you observe through layers of fear, judgment, and memory, you only see reflections of the past. Awareness is the most powerful creative tool you possess, yet few know how to use it consciously. They observe through habit, through reaction, through fear, and then lament that life repeats. But in truth, they are only replaying the same program of consciousness within the quantum field. To change reality, you don't need to fight circumstances. You only need to change the quality of the light through which you see the world. When that light becomes clear, the reflection changes. The universe always responds instantly to your current frequency, not when you are perfect, not when you achieve something, but right now. Therefore, every moment is a chance to choose again. You can choose peace instead of fear, trust instead of doubt, gratitude instead of resentment. Each choice is a shift through parallel realities, and whether or not you notice it, life continuously mirrors what you choose. When you look back, you'll see that the greatest turning points in your life didn't come from external change, but from the moment you saw differently. A single sentence, a realization, a deep breath can make the entire world change color, because when the observer changes, reality changes. And then you understand that you don't live in a fixed world. You live in an infinite symphony where every glance, every thought, every vibration is a note composing your unique reality. Reality is not something to be understood, it is something to be co-created. And when you step out of the role of the observed and return to the seat of awareness, You don't just see the world, you begin to create it with every breath. There is a stage in the awakening journey that nearly every soul must go through, a stage where light and darkness merge so closely that you no longer know whether you are losing or gaining. It is the moment when the old ego dissolves and a new energetic structure is forming. Many call this the dark night of the soul, but in truth, it is the deepest reorganization of the entire human system. As consciousness expands, every layer of old energy begins to rise to the surface. Emotions you thought you had forgotten, memories you believed you had healed, fears you assumed you had overcome, all come alive at once, not to break you, but to free you. Everything that has been repressed in your energetic field is being pulled into the light, and that light not only illuminates, it burns. Many people mistake this phase for a crisis, but a crisis is when you lose your foundation. This, however, is when the old foundation collapses to make space for a new structure to form. When a vibrational system no longer resonates with the soul's frequency, it begins to dismantle itself. The body feels exhausted, the mind chaotic, emotions unstable, everything becomes uncertain. Yet behind that chaos, a deeper order is being established. Like when a storm sweeps across the ocean, the surface becomes violent, but the depths remain still. Your consciousness works the same way. While the surface breaks apart, the deeper layer stays luminous and calm. If you listen deeply enough, you can sense that silent wisdom. Quantum physics calls this process energy reorganization, when the particles in a system shift from an old state to a new configuration to reach a higher level of stability. In humans, this happens on every level. The brain begins forming new neural connections. The heart adjusts its rhythm of communication with the brain. The cells respond to higher frequencies by opening new channels of energy exchange. You are not breaking down, you are being restructured. But restructuring always requires a phase of dismantling. You cannot build a new architecture while the old foundation still stands. So when everything in your life starts collapsing at once, when you feel like there is nothing left to hold on to, that is not a sign of the end. It is an invitation to a beginning. Every rebirth happens in darkness. A seed does not sprout in sunlight, but in the depths of the earth. Humans are the same. The darkest stages are often where light is conceived. The problem is that the mind cannot stand not knowing. It fears losing control, losing identity, falling into nothingness. But the soul does not fear the void, it is the void. When you stop trying to understand and begin to allow, you are making way for the universe to do its work. Reorganization does not require the mind's interference, only your consent. In the moment you say, I allow, your entire energy field begins to shift direction. Resistance starts to melt, flow returns, and new energy begins to circulate. Sometimes it comes as a weightless feeling with no reason. Sometimes as a strange stillness after an emotional storm. These are signs that a new balance is forming. On a deeper level, the dark night of the soul is not true darkness. It is light so intense that your eyes have not yet adjusted. The pain does not come because the light harms you, but because you are learning to see with new eyes. Every fear in this phase is an illusion. The fear of loss is not real loss. It is the old soul handing its place to the true soul. And when you stop holding on, you'll feel a gentle power rising from within. You begin to understand that you don't need to fight to survive, for your essence cannot be destroyed. When you stop resisting the darkness, it dissolves into you. When you stop trying to understand, deeper intelligence begins to operate. When you stop striving to be better, you begin to become real. Everything in this stage brings you back to the absolute simplicity of the present. Just breathe, feel, and let the energy rebalance itself. When the mind stops controlling, the body begins to heal. When the ego stops judging, the heart opens. When you stop holding on, the universe starts rearranging everything around you. You don't need to understand the process, only trust its rhythm. Just as winter cannot last forever, the dark night is only a phase of the awakening cycle. And one morning you'll notice that the air feels different, the light feels different, and you too are different. You'll find yourself lighter, calmer, deeper. What once frightened you no longer has power. Relationships that once caused pain now become mirrors of love. Everything old has been purified, leaving only truth. That is when you step out of the dark night with new eyes, seeing the world not through the lens of ego, but through the awareness of the soul. And you will understand that dissolution was never your enemy, but your most faithful companion, always appearing when your soul is ready to grow another level. The cycle of dissolution and rebirth does not happen just once. It is the natural rhythm of evolution. Each time you expand, another old layer falls away. And each time it does, you become clearer, truer, closer to your pure essence. The dark night is only frightening when you think you are lost. But when you realize that light itself has roots in darkness, all fear dissolves. You see there is no boundary between endings and beginnings, between loss and gain, between decay and renewal. They are all the universe's breaths moving through you, and in the moment you accept this, the night is no longer dark, it becomes a gateway that leads you back to the center of yourself, where nothing needs fixing, nothing needs becoming, only pure presence, quietly blooming into new life. When the darkness of dissolution settles, another kind of peace begins to emerge, not an explosive joy, but a profound stillness so deep that it feels as if the entire inner and outer worlds are breathing in unison. This is the stage of true rebirth, where energy is being rearranged into a new order. You are no longer who you were yesterday, yet not quite who you will be tomorrow. You exist between two breaths of the universe, between what has dissolved and what has just been born. Everything within you begins to operate differently. The mind no longer chases control, the heart no longer needs protection, and the body responds to life with natural trust. Emotions are no longer divided between good and bad. Everything is simply energy in motion. This is the resurrection of consciousness, when the soul is once again allowed to guide the body and the mind. Rebirth does not come from trying to become new. It comes from allowing the universe to do its work without interference. When you no longer resist, the blocked layers of energy are released. The nervous system begins to enter regulation. Brain waves shift out of reactivity and into the rhythm of creation. The body instinctively knows how to heal, and the cells begin receiving signals from the higher frequency of consciousness. What once frightened you no longer holds power. You begin to realize that everything is functioning perfectly according to a greater intelligence. And in that realization, trust begins to bloom, not trust built on hope, but a deep knowing that the universe has never made a mistake. Everything that once caused pain now becomes the raw material of growth. Every path that once closed off is now seen as a redirection leading you toward alignment. This trust does not come from the mind, it comes from the direct connection between the soul and the quantum field. When you release the need to control, the intelligent energy of the universe can flow through you unhindered. That is the core mechanism of rebirth. You do not rebirth by doing something, you rebirth by stopping everything that once blocked the flow of life through you. In this phase, every system within you is being reprogrammed. The nervous system begins adapting to the new frequency, creating stable communication between heart and brain. Tension disappears, not because circumstances have changed, but because you are no longer caught in old patterns. The energy that once protected the ego is now transformed into creative power, and through that you become a channel for higher intelligence. Ideas, inspiration, intuition arise effortlessly without calculation. You begin to live in synchronicity. People, opportunities, and situations appear at the right time and in the right place, as if an invisible current were arranging everything for you. But in truth, No one is arranging it for you. It is you, at a higher level of awareness, orchestrating your own reality. The universe does not respond to please. It responds to the frequency you emit. And when you live in the vibration of trust, every response is harmonious. This is the state science calls coherence, where the systems within the body achieve resonance. The heart, brain, and surrounding energy field function as one unified organism. When this happens, you not only feel peace, but also begin to radiate an energy field that alters your environment. Others feel calm in your presence, not because of what you do, but because your energy carries the frequency of order. In this rebirth, you realize that trust is not a spiritual choice. It is the very mechanism of the universe. Every stream of energy moves through natural trust. The seed trusts the soil. The river trusts the sea. Light trusts the darkness. And the soul trusts life itself. Only the human mind doubts, because it has forgotten that it is part of the same system. When you regain that memory, you no longer have to try to believe, you simply know, and in that knowing, all worry dissolves. You recognize that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Nothing is late, nothing is lost, nothing is wrong. The universe never errs. This trust opens the door for creative energy to return. You begin to see the world through the eyes of a child, where everything is fresh, where every moment is an opportunity to recreate yourself. There is no pressure, no comparison, only life expressing itself through you. This is the state mystics call living in the flow, and scientists call the flow state. In this state, there is no boundary between the doer and the doing-only energy moving through you. Everything becomes effortless, natural, and full of meaning. You no longer strive to achieve, for you see that everything is already being given. When you live in this trust, something remarkable happens. What once frightened you becomes a gentle lesson. Challenges no longer cause panic, because you understand they are waves helping you stabilize at a higher frequency. The more you trust, the stronger you become. The more you let go, the higher the universe lifts you. At this point, you understand the true meaning of surrender. It is not giving up. It is stepping out of the role of controller to become a co-creator with the universe. When you do this, life becomes a dance. Every event carries rhythm. Every encounter has purpose. Every moment holds its own wisdom. Rebirth is not a single moment. It is a state of being. And in that state, you feel everything connected, everything alive, and nothing to fear. You know that whatever happens is part of a greater symphony, where every note is perfect. This is quantum trust, a trust that does not come from the mind, but from the awareness that you and the universe are not separate. You no longer need proof, guarantees, or control. You only need to be present. And when you live through that presence, you are reborn, not as someone else, but as yourself, in the purest and most complete form your soul has always longed to live. The moment you read these words is no longer a coincidence. Something has been activated within your energy field. An ancient memory is awakening, as if your soul recognizes a signal it has long been waiting for. This vibration does not come from outside. It arises from within, from the deepest part of you, the part that has always known the moment of true transformation has arrived. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready, but right now. A subtle shift is occurring in the space between each breath. When you inhale, you are inviting in the energy of your higher self. When you exhale, you are releasing the old part that has fulfilled its purpose. Every breath is a gateway, and you are walking through it effortlessly. This is the beginning of activation, where you no longer seek change, but begin to live as change itself. From this moment, your energy has been recoded. What once frightened you no longer holds the same power. The limits that once restrained you now become transparent. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed. The universe does not operate through language, it responds through frequency. And your frequency has just elevated. When the frequency changes, the reality around you begins to rearrange. Relationships, jobs, and situations that once played roles in your past may begin to drift away. Not as loss, but because you no longer need them to learn the same lessons. When one chapter closes, the next opens automatically. Activation is not something that happens outside. It is the inner recognition that you are ready to step into a deeper layer of existence. This is the invitation the universe is sending to you, not an invitation to believe, but to remember. Because you don't need to learn how to become light. You only need to remember that you have always been light. Each time you choose to live authentically, a new energetic code opens within the quantum field. Each time you release a layer of fear, your wave grows brighter. And when the light becomes strong enough, it begins to affect everyone around you without you having to say a word. This is the mechanism of awakened energy transmission. You don't persuade anyone, you simply become living evidence of presence. When others feel your frequency, something within them begins to vibrate as well. And that is how light spreads, not through noise or display, but simply through existence. This activation is not only for you, it is part of a greater movement in which millions of souls are awakening simultaneously on this planet. Each carries a unique role, a specific frequency in the symphony of the cosmos, and you are one note in that composition. No one is more important than another, yet each is irreplaceable. When you remember who you are, you restore a fragment of the sacred order within the whole, and the universe responds by revealing paths you had never seen before. Doors appear only when you are still enough to realize they have always been there. Activation is also an invitation to live with the quantum trust you felt during rebirth, to trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it should, to trust that there are no mistakes, only guidance, to trust that every choice made from the heart is supported by the universe. When you live with that trust, your energy becomes transparent and reality responds instantly. You begin to see synchronicities everywhere, repeating numbers, chance encounters, impossible coincidences, not randomness, but feedback from the quantum field showing that you are aligned with the flow of life. Each sign is a whisper reminding you that you are on the right path. Activation also brings challenge, because as your energy rises, the unhealed parts will surface to be released. You may feel more sensitive or find old emotions returning. Do not mistake this for regression. It is the natural cleansing of your system as new light passes through. Everything that arises does so not to weaken you, but to purify you. Each time you face the darkness without running, your light expands a little more. And eventually you realize there is no separation between light and darkness, only one continuous current of energy flowing through you called life. In that state, you become centered, no longer swayed, no longer searching, no longer needing to prove anything. You become the space in which everything is allowed to be. And that is true power, not control, but acceptance, not possession, but integration. From that place, every action carries the energy of clarity and wisdom. You speak less, yet every word carries weight. You do less, yet every act has impact. You no longer strive to be seen, because your light is strong enough to shine on its own. The universe did not give you this power to keep for yourself, but to share. Activation is not complete until you begin to radiate. And radiating does not mean teaching, it means being. When you walk in silence, when you look at others with compassion, when you listen with an open heart, you are activating others without them even knowing. That is how consciousness evolves, one soul at a time, one vibration at a time. Now you stand at the threshold of the next level, where your soul will learn to create reality through unity, not through need. The door is open. All you need to do is step through, not by effort, but by allowing. Let this invitation touch you like a breeze, gentle yet undeniable. Let the silence between these words sink into your heart, for it is in that silence that energy activates. You are no longer the listener, you are part of the message. No longer the student, you are the rememberer. And when you realize this, you become the bridge between two worlds, between matter and consciousness, between form and the formless. This is the next layer of awakening, where you no longer seek the light, but become the light itself. And the world, in its quiet reflection, begins to mirror that light through every pair of eyes that look upon you.